Welcome to the NRHA Virtual All-Industry Conference. Adrian Thompson is Partner in Charge and Chief Diversity Officer at Taft Law based in Cleveland, Ohio. At Taft, Adrian provides counsel for private sector clients on issues including equal employment opportunity litigation, wage hour problems, employment of the disabled, federal housing, and other labor matters. As Taft's Chief Diversity Officer, he helps drive the firm's commitment and strategy regarding diversity and inclusion across Taft offices and in the communities that the firm serves. He is recognized as the 2020 Education Law Lawyer of the Year by Best Lawyers in America. In his presentation, Adrian will discuss how prioritizing diversity and inclusion in your operation leads to positive outcomes and will offer strategies you can implement today. Please welcome Adrian Thompson.
Hello, my name is Adrian Thompson. I am Taft, Stettinius & Hollister's Chief Diversity Officer. I'm also the co-partner in charge of the Cleveland office. And it's my pleasure today and honor to collaborate with the North American Retail Hardware Association on driving awareness for diversity and inclusion and measuring results. So why don't we get started? So the topic of today's discussion is driving awareness for diversity and inclusion and measuring results. As part of today's discussion, I'd like to focus on the 3 R's. Number 1, let's revisit history of the hardware associations and hardware stores across America. We'll also raise awareness and redirect the future. At Taft, we like to say, history repeats itself. So we're going to revisit history, raise awareness, and redirect the future. And look at the picture. What do we have here? We have a picture of the hardware store. First, let's talk about its historical significance. So as part of my preparation, I worked with my colleague, Kathy Major, and she found a great document, a great resource. And it's called, for all of you, Community Plumbing: How the Hardware Store Orders Things, Neighborhoods, and Material Worlds. And it's by an author named Shannon Mattern. So that's a great resource. You'll get a flavor for my discussion today. So what did we begin with? Again, we took a lot of our information from the Community Plumbing article by Shannon Mattern. The world is built from stuff on its shelves. The hardware store holds and organizes the tools, values, and knowledge that bind a community, define a worldview. There's a material and a social sensibility in the store, its stuff and its service, and reflected in diverse clientele. For generations, a community's culture has been reflected by its hardware store. And let's just look at the different images we have here. Image number 1 is from Bleecker Street in Manhattan from 1938. Image number 2 is eating lunch at a country store in Faulkner County, Arkansas, 1940. The third image is from S.O. Grimes' General Store, and it was about 1930, 1940. And the fourth image is from Westminster, Maryland, circulation date 1895 to 1910. And that image is also from the Library of Congress. And you'll just see what's going on. You'll see a community coming together, purchasing goods, having discussions at the hardware store. You don't see a lot of diversity here, but that was America at the time. Hardware stores reflect the community. Again, the world was built from the stuff on hardware shelves. Hardware stores demonstrate that pretty much everything can be made and fixed by regular people. Hardware stores are more than just retail environments. They're where the community comes together, they meet, they socialize, they solve problems, and they communicate with each other. Hardware stores emerged in the 18th century from trading posts through settler colonialism. The stores grew to standalone buildings with user-friendly tools as the villages and the settlements expanded. And in the 1920s, there was a refocus on home innovation and home improvement. Now, again, my presentation today is about how we interact, how we communicate with each other through inclusion. So I'm also going to talk about what the hardware stores were and were not. So in the Jim Crow South and in some northern states as well, the stores were often segregated. And even when black customers were welcomed, there was no guarantee of safety. Now you remember Emmett Till, who was murdered in 1955 in Mississippi. Now Emmett Till had his initial interaction with Carolyn Brandt in the Brandt family's hardware store in Mississippi. So the same conditions that make the general store a powerful space of social ordering could also make it dangerous for those who transgressed its codes. And it may not have been the hardware store owner, but just the community in general, especially during those times. And that's just something we have to remember. And our communities are comprised of people, and everyone has a personal story. And you'll hear me talk about personal stories. At Taft, we believe personal stories are important because our personal stories give us context. And it lets me and will let you know about your colleagues, your customers, everyone you deal with. The context helps us understand our journey and where we're going. This is another thing we do at Taft. We ask everyone to share their story, and we'll show you why. So this is my story. I'm the young black man, young boy in the top picture. That's my school. My sister actually taught the school. As you can see, I lived on the wrong side of the tracks. So I grew up with a lot of poor white kids from West Virginia, Kentucky, and a lot of Mexican and Latino kids who had moved from Mexico and Texas and different parts of the country to actually work in the farm fields. My dad worked on the railroad. My family migrated from New Orleans, Louisiana during the Great Migration to Chicago, to a small town first called Chicago Junction and then named Willard, Ohio, after the owner of the B&O Railroad, Daniel Willard. I've been an attorney over 30 years, but I joined Taft 14 years ago, and I was the second African-American partner to join the firm. And a lot of my friends and colleagues ask me, why are you joining Taft? It's all white. The black people there don't survive. It's not a good environment. But I knew the people in Cleveland. I had worked with them in the past as I was a general counsel for Cleveland schools. And we had a great relationship. And a lot of them were actually my mentors. So I guess I took a leap of faith and I joined the firm. And it's probably the best decision I made in my life. Taft was named after Senator Robert A. Taft, who was the son of President Taft. So why do I say these things? Because we're here to talk about inclusion and how you get there and what are the impediments to inclusion. And one of the impediments are our unconscious biases. And biases are triggered by our differences. You heard in my discussion on the last slide, a lot of my colleagues, my friends, told me not to join Taft because of the biases that they had built up about the Taft firm in Cincinnati. Taft was a blue blood firm, majority white firm. So, and people were triggered, but when they heard the word Taft, Stettinius, and Hollister in Cincinnati, they were triggered by right-wing, racist, not inclusive, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I was welcomed with open arms, except for my first day. And I'll tell you what happened to me on my first day at Taft. I arrived at the office about 8:30, and there was a older white woman who got off the elevator banks with me at the same time. She looked back, saw me. I had a suit on, suit and tie. I was clean shaven, and she ran and she locked the door in front of me. Now, she had an unconscious bias. For some reason, she was not comfortable with being in the same space with an African American. And she locked the door in front of me, so I couldn't get in the office. I had to call my secretary to come and open the door. That was my first experience at Taft. But things got much better after the first day. So biases are automatically triggered by visual and audio characteristics and past experiences, as I just discussed, both direct and indirect. And stereotype biases disappear when you become an individual. So after my first experience with the young lady, we still didn't get along, but she knew who I was and I knew who she was. So we didn't get along not because I was an African American or because what happened between us. She was just that type of person. She didn't get along with many people in our office, and she left after about 5 years. So many differences that we all have are very visible. You have different people on these slides, and I'd just like to talk about Maya Angelou, civil rights activist. Clemens Vonnegut Sr. was a founder of Vollmer and Vonnegut retail hardware stores from 1852 to 1865. Mae Jemison was the first African American in space. FDR was someone who may have saved this country during the Great Depression and who tried to bridge all gaps, who got rid of the segregated armed forces in the United States to the best of his ability. And Thurgood Marshall was the first African American Supreme Court justice, but he was also instrumental in the Brown v. Board of Education decision. Some differences are invisible. Invisible differences have to be revealed for us to know that we are different from someone else. Don't assume that you are similar to or different from other people. Now we have 2 African American males and we have 2 white males who are very different. Barack Obama was the 45th president of the United States, and Clarence Thomas was the second African American Supreme Court justice. So although Barack Obama and Clarence Thomas are both African American men, they have very different mindsets. President Obama was largely responsible for the Obamacare program, the healthcare program. Right? True to his conservative leanings, Supreme Court Justice Thomas dissented in the Supreme Court's landmark decisions in June 2015 to uphold the federal tax subsidies of the Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare, as well as the constitutional rights of gay couples to get married. Now, Chief Justice Warren and Chief Justice Rehnquist were very different as well. Much of the landmark decisions of the 50s and 60s were authored by Earl Warren. When Judge Rehnquist took over, the court became much more conservative, and you saw the decisions go further to the conservative side of things. So when you look at someone, just because an individual is a woman, because they are African American, they're Latino, they're white, they may not think the same, and many don't. So we don't assume that you are similar to or different from other people. That's something that we really focus on at Taft, to truly be authentic and to be original. We ask people to bring their authentic self to Taft. We try to have an inclusive environment where we value everyone's viewpoint. We believe that everyone can contribute, and that's why we bring talented individuals to our team, and we try to retain them by having an inclusive environment. Let's talk about things that inhibit inclusiveness. And one are micro inequities that are often referred to as subconscious bias. Micro inequities refer to ways in which individuals are either singled out, overlooked, ignored, silenced, or otherwise discounted based upon unchangeable characteristics such as race or gender or maybe a physical or mental disability. These issues may seem like no big deal, but they are hindrances to inclusion. Especially if you are on the receiving end. So what we say at Taft is we have to pay attention to people, pay attention to our colleagues, to our customers, to our clients, to people in the community, because everyone deserves to be heard, and they will pay attention to you in return. Now, what are micro inequities? There's subconscious, subtle signals that may reveal a bias or demonstrate the difference between inclusion or exclusion. Examples are mixing up names of people from the same racial or ethnic background. Hey, John. Hey, Willie. Oh, Adrian. I'm sorry, that's Adrian. That's not Willie, that's not John. Are you intentionally mispronouncing someone's name? Are you avoid eye or physical contact with a disabled person? Or you completely ignore a member of the LGBTQ community? When you pay attention to people, they deserve it, and they will pay attention to you in return. What are micro inequities? Just some examples. Walking into a meeting and greeting some people informally or others informally. The leader of your organization, and typically in Fortune 500 companies, leaders of the organizations are tall white males. But he's not the only one in the room making the decisions. He has a team of people. What people typically do is that they will greet the leader, but ignore others or greet them informally. Another thing that we've witnessed and we'll talk about our experts who help us along our inclusion path, is that male administrators were referred to by title such as doctor, while female administrators with the same standings are referred to by their first name or incorrect title, such as instead of Dr. Major, they may call someone Miss Major, hey Kathy, even though that person is a doctor or the leader of an organization. Other times you interrupt some people or you may ignore what they say. And a lot of my female colleagues, we talk about this. They may be in a meeting with a client, with the court, and they may make a great point. But the judge or the people in the room don't hear them. But a male will make the same point. And that leader, the judge, or the customer, or members of the community will say, hey, Bob, that was a great point. But Kathy made that point 2 minutes earlier. We just didn't hear her. Or we interrupted her. Or we say, well, I think Adrian was trying to say, even though what I said was clear. I hope I'm clear today. Or you tell a gay person, hey, I didn't know you were gay. You don't look gay. And here are some discussion points that we have as a firm where we just ask our colleagues to openly talk about micro inequities or subconscious bias. My first example is my partner from Indianapolis. His name is Jewel Lee. Jewel told us he was in court one day, and the judge actually said to him, boy, Jewel, your English is good. How long have you been in this country? Jewel and his family are actually from Cleveland. So that is something that he experiences in one of his first sessions before a judge. Jewel is a part of his wife, they have an interracial marriage, and their children are biracial. But many times when they're in the airport, his wife said, she's asked, boy, are your children adopted? Are they from China? They're gorgeous. And you can just imagine, and they say that in front of the children, you can imagine the impact that would have on your family or on your children or on your wife for that matter. So to deal with our unconscious biases, we use someone, her name is Erin Reeves, and she's great. She's been great for the firm. We use her all the time. Organizations of all sizes are addressing unconscious bias. We, again, enlisted Erin Reeves. She is the CEO of Nexions. You can see her book, One Size Never Fits All. It's on Amazon. There are paperback versions you can get for less than $5. I recommend that for everyone as a primer to get to know Dr. Reeves. And there are other experts. You as an organization have to determine where you are in your inclusion journey and who the best person is for you. We use Dr. Reeves because her approach is based upon data and research. And if you look at most organizations, who's the leader of most organizations? It's white males. So we wanted to make certain that as part of what we were doing, we weren't attacking white males. We wanted white males to understand what we were doing, to look at implicit bias, to look at how they were acting, but also look at how we were acting, to make certain that we had buy-in. Again, I'll give you an example. I'm from Willard, Ohio, a railroad town, but I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. So I still, to this day, have a bias against kids who grew up on the other side of the tracks, especially white kids. And my colleagues at Taft, they said, Adrian, when you're doing interviews, you're always favoring the underdog. We could have a kid come in from Harvard with a 4.0, and you're always recommending we hire that kid with a lot of grit that has a 3.5 that may come from its state university. I said, you're right. Thank you for pointing that out. I still believe that grit is the most important determinant of success. But they pointed that out. That's an unconscious bias that I had against a group. And that's not right. That's wrong. So that's something I had to take into consideration. So we ask each of our partners to do that same thing. We go through that exercise. So what did Erin do for us? She helped us be purposeful about forming inclusive work teams. We look at our work teams and we ask the question, why? If my work team is made up of all people of color, are all women, are all white men, I ask myself, why does your team look like that? Can you be more inclusive? We've demonstrated that we have biases and we may not even realize it. My partners and my colleagues pointed my biases out to me. We also know that diverse team members help us deliver more creative solutions for our clients. And many of our clients, as you're probably realizing as well, many of your customers are also looking for diverse teams, looking for diverse members to make certain that your demographics match the communities that you serve. We're serious about our progression with unconscious bias training. Again, we brought in Dr. Reeves, but we've also been Mansfield certified, and it's a 12-month certification process, and we were rewarded the Mansfield Rules certification. And for us, it's an important milestone. It's important in the legal industry. Only 102 firms across the country are qualified. So what did we have to do to become Mansfield Rules to gain Mansfield Rules Certification Plus status? We had to have at least 30% of our women and attorneys of color and LGBTQ and lawyers with disabilities are in leadership positions. In our firm, we have much more than that. At least 50% of our executive committee are made up of people of color and women, and many of them are younger than 40. Taft's unconscious bias training outcome. We wanted and we did influence on how we see the world, how we interact with our peers, how we form our client teams, how we engage our clients, and how we contribute to our communities. And I want to talk about each one of those. This year, after what happened to George Floyd, our managing partner addressed the entire firm about what happened in Minneapolis, about racism in general, about the other isms, the things that keep us divided. And we had an open, firm discussion with all attorneys, all staff, where we just talked about race, racism, sexism, things that divide us in the country today. It wasn't political, it was just an open discussion. And Bob opened the floor and he asked me and my colleague, Zanika Tucker, to also share her views. And we just gave personal stories on racism that we experienced as African Americans in America. And it happens. Racism is here. It will be here. It'll probably be here for a long time. We just have to make it a better world. So by having those discussions, it opened up our colleagues on how they see the world and how we see the world. And after that discussion, we just had office discussions on race. We participated in a book reading 21-day racial equity challenge over 3 weeks that was open to the entire firm, both attorneys and staff, where we just had every Thursday or Friday for 3 weeks, we had an open discussion on the items and the issues that we're facing, all of us as Americans today. It was very rewarding. It was just an inclusive environment. Not everyone agreed, but we had open discussion where everyone trusted the room they were in. They felt free to communicate and have open dialogue, and everyone was respectful of each other's opinions. Again, we interacted with our peers. We made the Taft team stronger. By doing that, it helped us form more inclusive teams. We got to know others in the different offices. We have a retreat every year, like you're having now, where we get together and we just have sessions on gender advancement and inclusion, where we just talk about these issues. Again, we don't all have to agree, but we should listen to the viewpoints. This helps us engage with our clients. I've had many opportunities to have these type of discussions with clients and potential clients, where we discuss on how to make the environment more inclusive and how you retain your top talent. That's why we're here today, to talk about inclusion, retaining top talent, retaining your customer base. For us as a law firm, when we look across the table, 10, 15 years ago, the people making the legal decision on how to spend the legal dollar were probably all white males. Today it's very different. You have more women, people of color, members of the LGBTQ community, many more disabled attorneys, older attorneys, younger attorneys, determining how the dollars would be spent. The other thing that we're really enthused about is how we interact with our communities. In each of our cities, we work with school districts, pipeline programs, especially in inner cities and poor communities, because typically kids who are of color or who are economically disadvantaged have very few opportunities to be where you and I am today. So a part of what we do is to give back to our communities, just by showing our next generation of leaders, our future leaders, that there are opportunities outside of your neighborhood. Because today, many of our young people, they're facing a very violent situation at home, or just what they see on the news, the media, on the internet today. It's a very different world than what you and I grew up in. The kids today, they really have to grow up very fast. And we understand that. We try to give back in the community. And the other thing we try to do is to be thought leaders in our community. And you can do the same thing. Speak out on issues. Again, you want to get a united front in your organization, but talk to the leadership, and we do that as a firm. As we meet with the executive committee, I'm on the executive committee, and we meet with the D&I committee, but we also meet with our managing partner, Bob Hicks, and we discuss issues of the day. And sometimes we don't speak out, but other times we do. When we feel it's necessary, we speak out as a voice to the community to let them know what we think as a firm. So I'd just like to talk to you about the impact of our diversity, inclusion, unconscious bias training, just to give you a few examples from our partners, what they said. Ralph Conan is a white-collar criminal defense partner in our Cincinnati office. And our unconscious bias training was very enlightening to our attorneys. And like our organization, your organization is comprised of people of all ages and demographics. If you embark on training, I believe, and we believe, your workforce will likely experience similar aha moments. And what Ralph said, he was a former U.S. attorney. I had never considered that bias is really a form of a shortcut. It's not the best approach to serve a client. Again, we believe that unconscious bias are restrictors. They inhibit thoughtful thinking because it's a shortcut. You don't consider the entire world. You only look at your worldview, which is a shortcut. And Jim Strain is our partner in Indianapolis, and his politics is on the conservative side. And we've had many discussions with Jim. But when we had the training, I was not concerned, but I was very interested in what Jim would say. And I had a discussion with Jim, and he said that he appreciated the psychology and science behind why we do what we do. Hard to say how much of this is bias or just instinct, but I appreciated the research in the background. So just to give you more insight on our unconscious bias journey. Every year we hold a retreat for our attorneys of color, members of the LGBT community. And the next training session we have, we'll probably invite attorneys of color, members of the LGBTQ community, as well as other groups, such as our attorneys with physical or mental handicaps. And those groups, we ask folks to self-identify. We don't make a determination. Folks that come self-identify, even the people of color, we ask them to self-identify because, again, we don't want to make assumptions about who people are. So at our last retreat, we had a retreat in Cincinnati. And we did this, number one, because we wanted to let the people in Cincinnati know that we cared about the city of Cincinnati and we were a member of that community. So we had a dinner at the reception at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center. We had a keynote presentation by Dr. Reeves. We have a panel discussion with 5 major clients facilitated by Dr. Reeves. And on that panel was the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals, who also participated. And we also, on a Saturday, we sat down with the Urban League and we actually held a session for members of the community to sharpen their interview skills, and we looked at their resumes. So we met as a group, we discussed bias, inclusion, and I forgot to mention at the meeting was the partner in charge of our Cincinnati office, James Zimmerman, our managing partner, who is in Indianapolis, Bob Hicks, as well as members of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and the group of people you see here as well. And it was just a great session. The firm did it because the firm knows that the people that were at the meeting were an important part of Taft. And they wanted to know, what's the environment like for people of color, for women who were at the meeting. And we had a very open discussion, a frank discussion, with both Dr. Reeves, with the panelists, and amongst ourselves. It was safe space where we got the issues on the table and we presented those issues. First, they presented the issues to me and my colleague Janika Tucker out of Columbus, who is the co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And we shared that information with Bob Hicks, the managing partner, who in turn shared it with the executive committee. And we continue to evolve. Again, we want to make the environment as inclusive as possible. Are we perfect? No, but we're working hard to be inclusive and to provide the best outcomes for our clients and for our team members. Just want to get into hiring, and to me, D. Hawk's statement is very powerful and very important. Never hire or promote in your own image. It is foolish to replicate your strength and idiotic to replicate your weakness. It is essential to employ, trust, and reward those whose perspective, ability, and judgment are radically different from yours. And at Taft, we always didn't do that. Because when I joined, again, I was the second black partner, and there weren't many people of color. There weren't a lot of women partners. And we rarely hired associates of color. But we've evolved over time. Like I said to you, everyone's on a journey. And we know that an inclusive team provides the best results. So as you look at how you hire, or where you place your stores, are the decisions you make as far as leadership opportunities, try to get past Me Tooism. Because we're all guilty of that. We all like to hire or be around people that are like us, me too. I want to be around Adrian because he looks like me, or he acts like me, or we think alike. You have to get beyond that because differences are celebrated at Taft, and we hope that you celebrate the differences that you have. But the differences always produce, and studies have shown that differences of thought, differences of how you think, how you solve problems, produce better results. Because if you only have people in a room like you provide homogeneous results, and those results are not the best results, studies have shown. Again, as you talk about diverse teams and why we look at diverse teams through the hiring process, You should break with conventional wisdom. Get less comfortable with your team structure. Hire and engage others from outside your peer group. And that's what we're doing. We have a 1L program where we bring in diverse candidates of color every year as law clerks, and they're part of our summer program. Typically, we have a 2L program where we bring in law students in their second year. But this is a part of our pipeline program to help us build a more diverse team. Diversity is the easy part. You can go out and hire a bunch of women for your hardware stores. You can go out and hire Latinos. You can hire African Americans, people of the gay community. The question is, will they stay? And how they stay is by making certain that you have an inclusive environment. And what we're finding about employment decisions, and this are the decisions that your customers are making as well. Our candidates who we want to bring in are studying our webpage, looking at our corporate diversity policies, our personnel policies, the different kind of affinity groups we have, and they're looking at our company activities, what we do as Taft. They want to join a company where they feel accepted, where their talents can be expressed, and where they can contribute to the bottom line of our company. And for you, it'll be your customers, but also your team members that help you run your stores and run your businesses. The young generation, they're really looking at corporate profiles now. The next group I really want to focus on are the millennials. Now, who are they? Millennials are born between 1981 and 1996, ages 23 to 38. Most were ages 5 through 20 during the 9/11 terrorist attack, but they were old enough to comprehend its historical significance. They also grew up during the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, which contributed to the political polarization shaping our political environment. Most were between 12 and 27 in 2008 and helped elect the first Black president of the United States, Barack Obama. They're the most racially and ethnically diverse adult generation in the nation's history, until Generation Z. And that group was born after 1997. Also like to talk about women. Women, the buying power of women, and just the political power of women, and the leadership opportunities for women are growing today. 75% of women believe that paid parental leave, flexible work hours, and part-time work policies are central to advancing senior women. So you need to consider these things as you build your workforce. The leadership table looks much different today than it looked 25 years ago. So to be ahead of the game and to beat your competition, you have to start thinking about these things. How diverse are we? How inclusive are we? What does our webpage look like? What does our corporate policy look like? What are we doing as an organization in our communities? What will our team members say about us to the community? Are they ambassadors for our companies? Do they say we are inclusive or we're working on inclusion? Let's talk about women in the home improvement industry. The research shows that women excel at all rapport building because of their strong emotional intelligence and empathy. There's a tremendous shift in women's role in home improvement over the last 20 years. From planning to buying the products to actually doing the work, women are taking a hands-on approach. Generation X and Generation Y women are more inclined to do the improvement themselves, to do the work themselves, a sign of increased confidence and growth. So that's something, again, we did a little research. I hope you agree with us that this is what the research is showing. So we ask the question to you, does your workforce reflect your customer demographics? And that's something we take into consideration at Taft. We're looking at our demographics. Again, we believe that inclusion is the most important. If you have an inclusive environment, people will come. But again, you have to look at your demographics in the area that you serve. Now, who are the top-rated retailers for customer service. For chain storage, top 3 retailers, Ace Hardware was the #1 brand. They received 81% of the votes for the top as a top retailer. And why did Ace score so highly? #1, customer service vision, the helpful hardware place. #2, they delivered on that vision, more than just kept smiling. They provided knowledgeable assistance to their customers. Customers get all they need at one time. They build trust and confidence and repeat visits. #3, when mystery shoppers came in, they were impressed at what Ace provided. So always ensure your reps meet your standards and are knowledgeable about your brand. #4, something I repeat, know your customers. As Taft, we have to know who our customers are. You have to do the same. Know who the community is you're serving and what they expect from you, and let them know that you're an important part of your community. And #5, know the value of your customers. As with us, our repeat customers are historically our best customers because they've been with us. We've built a trust relationship with them. So repeat customers bring lifetime values to the store. And they also help you make better decisions as an organization. I want to change the topic just a little bit. What I'd like to discuss now, especially for the managers out there, bad behavior of your employees. And 90 to 95% of your employees, I'm sure you agree with me, are great employees. But there's always that 3 to 5% that you have to deal with that can really disrupt your business, cause you to lose profits, or just stop your customers from coming in your store. #1, as a labor attorney, what I'm really seeing a lot this year are workplace harassment claims. As you know, discrimination is prohibited by both state and federal law. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the different states that you're in, and even the cities and the counties and the communities you are in probably have anti-discrimination laws or statutes on the books. City ordinances, the same. So discrimination with respect to a person's compensation, terms, conditions, and privileges of employment because of that person's protected characterization is unlawful. So what are the protected classes? Race, sex, religion, national origin, disability, age. And now we have to consider LGBTQ status as well, especially the transgender status because of recent decisions of the courts on protecting those groups. You may not agree, but everyone has a legal right to be free of discrimination. And as a customer, just think of a customer coming into your store who is maybe a member of the LGBT community, doesn't feel welcome. That's dollars that you're losing because that person doesn't feel welcome. A person who is of color or who's a different national origin coming into your store and not feeling welcome. It's the same with us as a law firm. To be the true inclusive employer of choice for us and to be the retailer of choice in your community, you have to have an inclusive environment. Not everyone in your organization will agree with this, but what we always say is that you may not be able to change attitudes, but you can change conduct. Everyone should follow the same rules. And they should be respectful of everyone that comes into your stores, just like we are respectful of all our members of our team, as well as our clients, as well as members of the community. That's our goal. And what's going on with the world today, we have to have safe space. Now, you may have discussions, people may want to discuss what's happening in the world today at work, but it has to be respectful. So you want to probably put policies in place to help guide you with workplace discussions or just workplace conduct. You want every one of your team members to be an ambassador for who you are as a organization. And that's how we are at Taft. What is unlawful harassment? Harassment is a form of employment discrimination prohibited by federal and state law. It imposes an unwanted condition on a person's employment because of that person's legally protected characteristic. Let's talk about sexual harassment. Again, this year I've done quite a few investigations and reports for clients on sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is unwelcome sexual advances. It could be requests for sexual favors or in verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. As we've seen, the conduct can be male on female, it could be female on male, it could be male on male, it could be female on female. Again, such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with the individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Again, who can make the claims? Any employee, male, female, a member of the LGBTQ community, based upon religion, could be based upon age, could be based upon pregnancy. There are many factors. And it could be, many of you have vendors. If your vendor or your supplier harasses one of your employees, you can be, as the owner, can be held responsible for the conduct of that vendor. So it's important for you to have sexual harassment training, to have a clear policy on harassment, including sexual harassment, and to enforce that policy. And when someone makes a complaint, make certain there is a person in your organization who you deem as responsible for following up on the complaint made by the member. And that person actually completing a fair and thorough investigation and informing you of the result, and as well as informing the alleged perpetrator as well as the victim of your results. And remember, same-sex harassment claims are now permitted by law. Finally, let's talk about workplace etiquette. What is good workplace etiquette? It requires each of us to act with civility. Civility is the social norms and rules created by society that, if followed, will allow employees to positively and productively relate with others. Keywords associated with good workplace etiquette and civility include respect, courtesy, tolerance, manners, politeness, consideration, and always have common sense and be sensible. Finally, as we talk about diversity and inclusion, I'll tell you why we do it at Taft. Because the statistics show that what we're doing, we're on the right path. Do we have it down? Are we perfect? No. But we have a system in place. We have plans in place to help us be a more inclusive employer. Statistics show that diversity and inclusion is an actual competitive differentiator, a strategic positioning tactic that an organization like Taft and like you can use to advance its market position. Companies in the top quartile of ethnic diversity outperform their competition by 35%. Companies in the top quartile for gender diversity outperform their competitors by 15%. And we get this information according to McKinsey. They actually did it for a construction industry, but it's similar across markets. Diversity of thought leads to innovative practices. Innovative practice for us means having a very open, authentic, and inclusive environment. And we also work with the communities where we work and live to be thought leaders. And at the end of the day, it's incumbent on each one of us at Taft, like it is, I'm sure it is for you, to make certain that everyone can bring their authentic self to the workplace and bring their talents to help you outperform your competition and serve your clients in your communities. Again, thank you and have a wonderful day.